Welcome back to the news at 10. The aviation sector has been hit by some weather challenges over the last few weeks, from the Harmattan season to Jonas. Hazardous weather conditions have made flying difficult. With repeated warnings from the Nigerian Meteorological Agency to pilots and a 2-day lockdown on flights out of some cities in the U.S., our next report takes a look at these conditions as they affect the aviation industry.
Statistics has shown that over 40% of aviation accidents and incidents in Nigeria are weather-related. Aviation safety depends largely on weather information, which includes weather reports and early warning of impending weather hazards. Although modern commercial jets are built to handle a large range of weather conditions, it's not designed for one such as Storm Jonas, which is hitting the United States at the moment. The weather situation is taking a toll on the aviation industry as thousands of flights, including transatlantic services, have been cancelled. The U.S. carriers may be holding on to the ground, but the ripple effect is hitting carriers arriving or departing Nigeria. One example is the rescheduling of 2 of Aric's Lagos-New York flights. Delta Airlines and other European carriers like KLM and Air France have also had their schedules largely disrupted, with an average of about 10,000 passengers affected. But there is hope that normal flights will resume as the storm heads to Britain. Bukola Joketumbi, Channels Television News.
Let's talk more about the weather now. I'm being joined on the news at 10 by Captain Audu Senussi, who's a pilot. You're welcome to the news at 10.
Thank you.
Well, I don't imagine that this season is easy for you to travel. So what's it been like?
Well, locally we have had the worst Harmattan hitting most of our airports, and there was a lot of disruption of flights. We had flights disruption of up to 200 flights between 2015 and 2016. But because we have been experiencing this phenomena of Harmattan, the weather forecast and the terminal forecast has improved greatly. But still, there is a need for improvement in forecasting accurate weather, especially with the visibility in our airports, at least the major airports that we have.
What's the risk of flying in this sort of weather in Harmattan? What's the risk?
Well, the Harmattan itself doesn't have there's no risk involved in it. But because of the restricted visibility at the airports, it makes it very, very dangerous, especially when a pilot comes into land. And most of the airports that don't have that instrument landing system, a guidance that gives you both vertical and horizontal guidance for the pilot and the airplane to come down safely on the ground. If you don't have that equipment, it makes it very difficult for the pilot to see the runway at a particular distance. So that means the Harmattan dust has an impact on the engines of the airplane, of course, but also when you come into approach and landing, it has a safety impact because you don't have a very good visibility of the runway.
Well, not to water down what we're experiencing here in Nigeria, outside the weather is much worse. We're hearing about the flight cancellations in the United States, a travel ban in New York, and then calls for people to avoid going out at all in Washington, D.C. and all of those places. How difficult is this period for pilots who travel, who fly, in these regions?
Yes, weather has been a part and parcel of aviation. Go back home or when they want to go back to work. And so there is a pressure on the commercial pressure on the airlines. But the good thing is the pilots, they're not scared of the weather, but they respect the weather. So they do not try and fly into bad weather like the storm we have in the east coast of the United States, which came in a little earlier than we expected. So we had to reschedule some of our flights out of Lagos.
But despite, this weather condition, there are still fewer air accidents, right?
Yes, and the good thing is there are the accidents that after the investigation shows that it was because of weather has reduced dramatically. And this is because of the technology that we have on board the aircrafts. Most of the newer aircrafts now have a lot of weather detecting, I would say, satellites and all that receivers they have on board the flights that actually give the pilot a lot of information on the weather ahead, and even if it's inside the weather, how to get out of it.
Well, bringing it back home, lots of people are scared to travel, even during normal normal seasons. I can imagine, lots of people are still a bit skeptical about traveling during this period. But what do you say to people who are still, hell bent on traveling, and they're doing the sign of the cross and they're praying and so on, and just hoping that they get to where they're going safe and sound?
No, the issue of weather, as I said, weather and aviation have always been together. And most new airplanes have developed a lot of gadgets that will tell the pilots where the weather is good or bad. And then we have also a very good NIMED. Now NIMED have a very good receivers of Eurosat. They call it EuroMedSat. They call it, which is just they've just acquired it, which will give you real-time forecast of weather. And we have terminal area forecast of weather now. So what my message to the flying public is that if the weather is bad and they are advised that the weather is bad, I think they should just relax and then wait for the weather to be good. And there shouldn't be a lot of pressure for the airlines, because most weather minimums are very are different from airlines to airlines. But the state has a normal weather, or rather a very basic weather minimums for each of the airports.
Captain Audu Senussi, I do pray for your good health as you fly the skies, whether tonight or whenever it is wherever your journey takes you. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10.
It's my pleasure.
Well, let's head on now to outside our shores. The travel ban has been eased up in New York City as the massive snowstorm begins to lessen. The city experienced its highest snowfall since records in 1869. As many as 14 people have died in snow-related incidents since Friday as people try to dig themselves out of the snow. 5 U.S. states have been hit by 91 centimeters of snow, dubbed Snowmageddon and Snowzilla on social media. 85 million people across the U.S. have been affected by the storm, and 300,000 people have been without power since the storm started. Well, the snowstorm has not been as bad as the polar vortex experienced in parts of the U.S. and Canada in 2014, but a lot of Americans have been snowed in. And though the travel ban has been lifted in New York, travel systems are still skeletal in the U.S. capital, Washington, D.C. Some 7,000 flights were cancelled this weekend, and the disruptions have been predicted to continue into this week. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Maria Bird, joins us now on the weather in the United States. Maria, thanks for joining us on the News at 10. What's the situation in Washington, D.C. currently?
Well, Amarachi, it's been an interesting couple of days from Long Island, New York, all the way down to Virginia and even some parts of North Carolina. We've been hit by a major blizzard, blizzard of 2016. And what has happened at this point is the snow has stopped. So that's a great thing. So people are trying to dig out today. Plows are trying to get through on the highways to make way for people to begin traveling again, because as we all know, there have been some bans and people just have not been able to get out of their homes.
Can you tell us more about the travel ban in New York, though that has been lifted?
Put in place so that people could be safe. During these types of events, emergency preparedness vehicles need to be able to get through, plows need to be able to clear streets out, and the people are out on the roads. They're just causing more problems for the plows, more problems for the emergency response vehicles, and they themselves are putting others at risk and themselves at risk.
Maria, how are people receiving the thousands of flights that have been cancelled? How's that going?
Yeah, it's going to be a crazy, to be honest, couple of weeks here on the East Coast and throughout the U.S. because, as you know, when one flight on one side of the country is delayed, it causes major problems across the country. So we're going to see probably a week or more of people having to find ways to reschedule flights, people stranded in airports for extended periods of time. So it'll be a little while before we get back on track with our air flights here.
And how are people responding? How are they coping with being cooped up inside?
Well, it's pretty cold, but people are taking precautions. They're telling people don't be outside for too long, even when you're trying to remove snow from around your home, because as you know, it can cause damage to your home if you have too much snow piled up on top around. And so they're just telling people to take 30-minute intervals of time.
Well, thanks again, Maria. Sorry we lost you just as you were ending your report. Thanks for joining us on the News at 10. Now, the poor run of Nigeria's economy has been blamed on the Structural Adjustment Program, SAP, introduced by former head of State General Ibrahim Babangida. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mr. Audu Ogbeh, who picked holes in the program, said SAP pointed Nigerians in the wrong direction. Mr. Ogbeh, who disclosed this in an exclusive interview with Channels Television on Tupo, Benue State, said he was concerned about the high rate of unemployment among Nigerian youth. He advised youth to take advantage of the oil crisis and seize the opportunity being created to diversify into agriculture and non-oil sectors.
It isn't just winning at the election. It's about getting our people to realize that we can't continue the way we're doing because we're very poor people here. We have to industrialize. We have to return to agriculture. We have to recognize and teach young people that hard work pays. And above all, we have locked the doors against young people in this country. We have to open these doors. If not, there's no future for this country. For me personally, that's been a philosophy. And I'm not an economist, but I've been very angry with the structural adjustment program that brought Nigeria where we are now. I think it's time to change it. Thank God oil is gone. Thank God we have an opportunity to do real things and produce real wealth. That's why we're here. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter who's in charge. Things have remained basically the same for many years.
The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mr. Audu Ogbeh. Road accidents across the country have caused a larger mortality rate compared to diseases and criminal activities, including murder. This was highlighted by the governor of Ondo State, Olusegun Mimiko, during the commissioning of the 1.6 billion naira mega terminal project in Lokoja, the state capital. Host Governor Captain Idris Wada explains the potential is to significantly increase the state's internally generated revenues.
Supporters of the People's Democratic Party, royal fathers, senior government delegates are here for the commissioning of the mega terminal park in Felele, Lokoja, the Kogi state capital. Shortly, the host governor, Captain Idris Wada, arrives in company of his Ondo state counterpart, Olusegun Mimiko, his wife, Hajia Lami Wada, and other dignitaries to begin the commissioning. In his opening speech, the State Commissioner of Transport says the terminal will bring sanity to the unregulated transport system in the state.
This is the biggest bus terminal in the whole of West Africa. They have capacity to take 500 buses. And not only that, it's designed to accommodate more than 14,000 people every day. 25,000 Nigerians use all our airports combined together. But all our bus parks in Nigeria combined together are used by 50 million Nigerians. So the time has come for us to redirect our energy, redirect our resources, where the majority of our people can feel the impact. And this is one of such projects.
Now, it's time for goodwill messages as Governor Wada gets commendations for the successful completion of the terminal in 12 months, despite the shortage of funds. Kogi State Governor Captain Wada explained the project is meant to eliminate traffic logjam, boost economic activities, and generate more revenue for the state.
Indeed, it's a great moment of joy for me to bring to reality the Lokoja mega transport terminal. And it is part of our idea of transformation of Kogi State and a promise to move Kogi State to the next level in a very practical and visible way.
Now, the stage is set for the commissioning of the terminal project.
I therefore launch these buses to the glory of God Almighty and the use of our people.
With the completion of this park, Lokoja, the Kogi state capital, is now on the proud list of states with ultra-modern infrastructure.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Arsenal drops to third on the English Premier League table after losing to Chelsea. We'll have more in sports news. Please stay with us.